Welcome, adventurers, to the Recall to Adventure podcast, where we're celebrating 25 years of Islands of Adventure. We'll be sitting down with some of the original show producers, animators, engineers, and designers for Universal Orlando Resort's Second Gate. We are your hosts, Holly
and Maya.
And now, for this episode, we are joined by John Rust, who is the soundtrack producer for Islands of Adventure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope we have a good time today.
To start off, how did you get started in the theme park industry?
That's a very strange story. I was in post-production working with a friend of mine. We were doing ADR. We were dubbing Academy Award nominated foreign movies with English dialogue so that they would win awards because people were too lazy to read the subtitles. So it was a group of actors, and we would just play all the parts and do kind of a slop dialogue of all of the nominated movies. We did this, and I directed a movie, ADR movie, and did a bunch of that voiceover, some Foley, managed a sound studio. And we go to work one day, and the office is completely empty. And there's just a box on the ground where my desk was with my name on it, with my stuff in it. And I look over at this friend of mine, and he says, wow, what are we going to do for work? And I go, I don't know. And he said, well, my college friend is down the street working for a man named Gary Goddard. And he has this company called Gary Goddard Productions, which later became Landmark Entertainment. He's got a theme park company. He's doing a great big project. Let's just go down there and tell them that that's what we do. So I brought that whole post-production background with me, walked in, and they said, what do you do? We have a job for a model builder. And I said, oh, love models. Never built one in my life. It'd be amazing. So my friend David Thornton, he becomes a senior vice president of this company over the years. I become a show director. I work in Puroland in Japan for Sanrio, and we do all these projects with Landmark, and then my time at Landmark comes to a close. So I have this big theme park background. I've got this big post background. I seem to be a jack of all trades at this point. So I barge into the theme park industry, and then years later, I had made friends with Scott Trowbridge, who worked with me in Puroland in Japan, and Robin Reardon. She was a producer at Landmark. And so Scott and Robin are doing this new project called Islands of Adventure. And they call me up and say, you got to come on board with us. So I go up to Universal and join them about 95. But prior to 95, I'm a writer for concepts for Islands of Adventure. So Phil Hedema, who's the senior creative director at the time, he is developing the park. And as he's developing, he has a bunch of freelance writers, and we're coming up with concepts. I came up with the first concept of Waterworld, which later became the Waterworld Stunt Show. I worked on the development of Lost Continent. Okay. One of the islands was not named, and we called it the Lost Concept for about 5 years. And we came up with the idea of Lost Continent, this place where myth and legends go to live safely and blah, 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 blah. This is prior to Potter and everything. This is when the land was exclusively that. So anyway, so I'm doing a lot of writing with Phil Hedema. And so when Scott and Robin say, hey, John should come on board, I'd been working with Phil for years, and Phil was the creative director of Islands, senior creative director. So naturally he said, oh, absolutely. So I came on board, and they assigned me with the soundtracks for the park. So that is the long answer to how I got into theme parks and how I got to Universal to work on Islands.
Completely side tangent. You said you worked on Sanrio Puroland. What did you do there?
I was a show director and a writer, and I did 2 attractions at Puroland.
That's amazing.
The Time Machine of Dreams and the Puro Boat Ride.
Heck yeah. I will ride those one day. It's my dream to go over there. So.
Oh my God. It's so weird. I run into people who go, you're associated with Puroland, and I have talked for hours at a party about Puroland. It's the most bizarre thing in the whole world. Now, this is before Sanrio comes to the States, so a lot of people here don't know the Sanrio characters at the time. They're just getting to know Hello Kitty a little bit, and let's do a Puroland reunion project later, and I can tell you stories and stories and stories about Puroland.
Yeah, sorry. That's my side tangent.
I could tell. You could tell from your face. You just lit up and was like, oh, that's what the podcast needs to be now.
I actually have the poster in my studio of Pure Land of opening day.
That is
Yeah.
incredible.
Oh my goodness, that's
Really.
amazing. Well, what other rides and attractions did you work on before this? Because you've definitely done quite a few beyond that as well, right?
Right. Before Islands, I come to them with Landmark Entertainment. I was lucky enough to do a lot of gift shops, which Disney kind of imitated this later with Disney stores. But Sanrio wanted to do Disney stores all over Japan, started doing those. And we did things like an animated talking tree or a magic blackboard where an owl turned and said things about it's time to go back to school and you need to bring hello with you and stuff like that. So we did like an environmental stores with animation and stuff like that. Then I did Pure Land, and I did Harmony Land, which is the sequel to Pure Land, which is in a place called Beppu in Japan. And it is a smaller park, but it's an outdoor park with rides and stuff like that. I have about 75 attractions under my belt of some capacity where I worked on as a show director, writer, or a soundtrack producer, or both, or sometimes all three.
Incredible, truly.
Yeah.
So what was it like working with multiple different composers to create the atmosphere for Islands of Adventure?
Here's how it fired off. Here's how the gun went off to start the race. I got sat down and told, we're going to have you be the soundtrack producer for this park. And I said, the Lost Continent doesn't have a theme song. Seuss Landing, Dr. Seuss does not have a theme song. I mean, we need to compose original themes for all the lands. Of course, Jurassic Park, we inherited the John Williams score, and that was easy to do. We went to the vaults at Universal and got all the unrecorded music that he'd recorded for the films that never appeared in the film. So we used that along with the title and all that stuff. So we had to come up with all this new stuff. I'd had a relationship with composers. I'd already hired composers, or Landmark Entertainment had actually hired a lot of composers, and I'd worked with a lot of composers, and actually majored in musical comedy and in theater in college, so have a music background. So working with, they said to me, instead of hiring companies that have composers, we are going to ask you to hire composers directly. Eliminate the middle guy, and more money goes into the music and not into a company that has a full-time composer. So opened up the Rolodex at the time. Oh boy, that dated me. And we got out the names of all the composers, and I contacted them and put together this group of composers and fit each composer, which I thought would be a good fit for each land, and had a lot of success with most of them. We did have a rock band who we gave them a down payment to write some music for Superhero Island. And I said, so we need to start hearing some of the music. And they told us that they'd spend it on a party, so that was a problem. So I said, well, you need to go borrow some money and that you used on the party and finish the tracks and stuff. So that is a little rock band that fell apart after they, I guess, second mortgaged the house or something so they could pay for the sessions to get me the tracks. And so that's where we got some of the background music in the Superhero Island. Everything else was, we have to escape union rules when we record for theme parks, because union protection of musicians and performances, it would be not affordable. It plays thousands of times a day, and you couldn't pay for each performance that it does. So we escape the union recording and go to non-union cities like Salt Lake City or Seattle. And Seattle actually is my favorite place to go, or London. We recorded Abbey Road Studios, and I got to use the same bathroom as John Lennon, which was, made my afternoon in a strange kind of way. So we did all of our recording out of the city, most of it in Seattle with their orchestra up there.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yeah. And the composers, they're a very diverse group. And we broke a record. We recorded 9 hours of original music, and no theme park then or ever again will have 9 hours of original music. It just won't. I mean, our friends at Disney use established themes. You want to hear the established song in each attraction that matches the IP. These IPs didn't have themes. They didn't have a musical association. Popeye had the sailor's hornpipe, kind of that old melody that they used in the cartoons. And we would nod to those kinds of things. But most of the time, we had to come up with a brand new sound. We had to write a theme song to Islands of Adventure, and imagine the executives that had to buy off on that one. It was, yeah. So I've got a really fun story. Let me tell you about the theme song to Islands of Adventure. So as you walk up to the front gate of Islands, you hear a gamelan orchestra. And a gamelan orchestra only has, we have 8 notes per octave. They have 5 notes per octave. And the gamelan orchestra is trying to play the theme song that will develop as you go down through the port of entry. So this strange sound, and to our Western ear, the gamelan orchestra is an unusual sound. It's eclectic and has homemade instruments, has weird rhythms, but it is actually playing the theme song to Islands, missing those 3 notes that are in their octave. We jumped them every time it got to it. So this eclectic kind of noise at the beginning, and then you come in and then there's a simple kind of a flute and it introduces you to the theme. And as you go down the street, more instruments join, and you go down the street and more instruments join. And by the time you hit the end of the lagoon, the vista of the whole park, it's a full orchestral version of the theme song. So, and it plays in dead sync as you go back and forth. You can jump back and forth from each zone because the tracks are playing multiple at the same time. So we never have a cacophony of two sounds happening at once. And there's just this, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the vista, the entry is dogleg, so that the vista is revealed at the very end as you kind of turn the dogleg. And there's all the adventure that awaits for you, all the islands from the end of that street.
That is amazing. I will have to listen for that next time I'm walking into Islands of Adventure.
Yeah. And that was composed by William Kidd, who is a very, very talented composer, protege to John Williams, and can imitate that kind of big feature film orchestral feeling that we, and I think our guests do, love that big, it just engulfs you. Immersive was our catchphrase. We did press on opening day, and we were all told to say the word immersive one time in each sentence. And so it's immersive entertainment. It is, it's everywhere. It's everything you see and everything you hear. And our friends at Disney have been doing it very well for a long time. But this is actually the first time Universal really made this unique, immersive, see, I threw it in there again, environmental experience.
DNA.
Yeah, it's in me. I say it at night too over dinner. It's a strange little habit that I have. Yeah. So, and those were the marching orders. And so we were very lucky on this. The producers, Lisa Girolami, Bob Shreve was one, Chris Stapleton, all these people, we became like a family. And that's unique. That doesn't happen in every project. We all helped each other. We all worked together. They said to me, "What are you going to do here musically?" I won their love. I showed them a couple of different options. We came up with an idea. I'll tell you, the origin of the theme song to Seuss Landing. We write a little melody. What's it going to be? You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch? No. You'd be insane hearing that for 8 hours a day if you worked there.
We do it during Christmas, so.
Right. We actually had a Christmas album too that we did. I'll tell you about that later. See, there's more to come. So we write a melody, and it's the theme song to Seuss Landing. Lisa likes it. Her team likes it. Everybody likes it. I have to go down to La Jolla and meet with Audrey Geisel, who's the widow of Dr. Seuss, right? So I go there. There's a studio down there. The Barbra Streisand stage is where she likes to record a lot in there. We go in there, but it has to be performed on a board because there's multiple tracks. Here it is being played like this. Here it is being played like this. And we had to be in there to kind of crossfade and show, here's the melody. So I play the melody for her on a piano score, and she says, I kind of like that. And then I show her all the sounds of how the different zones are going to sound. And then she says, I don't like it. And we sat there. Yeah, I liked it a minute ago, but you don't like, you don't like it now. No, I don't know. I don't like it. And it's a big commitment. This is going to be the theme song to Seuss Landing. So I said, how about lunch? Well, 3 gin and tonics later and a little bit of lunch. Audrey Geisel agreed on the melody. I just wore her out, I think, by 3 in the afternoon. She just wanted to go home. And she said, her quote was, I'm a lady, and a lady has the right to change her mind. And I changed my mind, and I like it. So with Audrey's stamp of approval, and I had to do that with every land, with every IP holder, because intellectual property holders have the final say. Once you get their stamp of approval, you're good to go, because then that overrides every Yahoo that thinks they have an opinion. Everyone has an opinion about music, by the way. Did you know that? Everybody. Yes.
I was a band kid, so.
Oh, you can ask any person on the creative team, and you can 30 people and get 40 opinions on the same note. So we met with Jay Ward's daughter for Dudley Do Right, and she is in charge of the intellectual property, Tiffany Ward, and sat down and said, we've got to get an answer. You've got to work with us. And she did. She gave us approval of all the original stuff that we did. King features for Popeye. I mean, all these rights holders. And we had lots of rights holders. Unlike our friend down the street in Anaheim, they are their own rights holders to all their music. Universal was not. Then when we said to Mrs. Geisel, we're going to make the instruments. We're going to cut up old instruments. We're going to take the bell off of a trombone and glue it to an oboe. And we're going to take PVC pipe and have it go all the way around the room and put a mouthpiece on it and put a horn on the end of it. And she just loved that, because that's what Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss, was all about, was this weird twisted. And we took all the illustrations of all of them and said, let's make that instrument. Let's make that instrument. So Seuss Landing is performed by homemade instruments, the whole thing.
That is really, really cool.
Yeah. And then we would sample them and then play them on a keyboard after we'd sampled the instrument, instead of playing each one, for every piece. We had this like wacky kind of trombone that was actually pieces of a cornet and everything just glued to it, and a lot of percussive things, a lot of garbage, hanging from the ceiling on fishing wire, where we would smack things and make different whack. Instead of cymbals, you'd hit like an old saw blade or something that just made a twink when you hit it and made all the sounds with that. So, yeah.
Awesome. If we're moving around the show lagoon, the next up would be the Lost Continent.
So we leaned on William Kidd again for this. He had a PhD in music and just overthinks everything that he does, right? It's just everything is intellectual, right? So we had the bizarre area. That had to sound Arabian-esque, Middle Eastern-y, finger symbols and all that kind of stuff. What he did was he talked to a linguist at USC, and she wrote us a language that didn't exist, and she sings that language. And that's the vocalist in the background of that whole bizarre area.
Wow.
She's made up, and she actually memorized it. So she has written lyrics and then translated it into this sound, these phonetic sounds of a language that doesn't exist, and made it sound very Middle Eastern. And that's the vocalist, and she's singing it in the track, which gives it this exotic, far away place. With all due respect, I mean, we're not going to really just sing lyrics of somebody else's language and pray that we're not offending anybody. So we made up a language. Of course, this is before Potter, so there's a Merlin area. Bill Kidd wrote that for the whole Merlin area, and Dueling Dragons, that was kind of that area right there. All that kind of exotic, or what our Western ear thinks is exotic, and our guests, they're tired, they're hot, and it's easy to bring them musically into an environment, because that sounds like this and this sounds like that, So, and I was always upset about cacophony, two tracks playing at the same time. So at Islands, there are transition zones, bridges that have just bell trees and sparkle and stuff to just hide that transition from one score to the other. And when I left Islands of Adventure, you could not hear another track in that park. You could not hear two tracks at the same time. And we were really, really, really proud of that. So especially leaving Lost Continent, we went, that bridge is very long, and there's bell trees and clanging, and just enough to mask that huge John Williams score that welcomes you into Jurassic Park, which our guests, you see the gate, you want the theme song, right? The two go together, right? So, and like I said, we'd gotten the archives and got all the tracks that were not used, and we used those all around there. We had a calypso band perform the Jurassic Park theme song that plays kind of over by the restaurant, which is just a relief from that orchestral theme song, kind of, pounding over and over again. A lot of drums in the corners. We were lucky because Jurassic Park, it was a Steven Spielberg film, and Steven is a part of all Universal theme parks. He is an executive creative director. And we went to Mr. Spielberg and said, can we get the original dinosaur roars from your movie. Sure. And those are the original roars from the first Jurassic Park, which somebody had gone to great extent to make this amazing roar. Why would we want to go and invent a roar again? Um, and some sound effects are trademarked. You can't, like the Star Trek door is trademarked. You can't use that. So he gave us all the dinosaur roars. So those are the feature film roars up in the distance. And there's giant speakers off in the bushes just doing an occasional roar, a rustle, a kind of a noise in the thing. And remember, I'm doing all the attractions too, all the soundtracks, all the dialogue, all the music for all the attractions at the same time we're doing the background music. So it's an enormous task, but really, really great, really fun.
I had orientations day for Jurassic Park, so I got to hear a lot of that today. And I told my trainer I was doing this interview, and he said, quote, "Tell that guy that the Camp Jurassic music is bussin'." So I'm carrying on that message.
The Camp Jurassic music is bust.
Bussin'.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that means good.
Right. So there's a big playground there, Camp Jurassic, of course. Yeah. And what do you do in there? Well, you're right. Sounded like music. Chip Smith and Tony Humecke, another one of our composer teams, they wrote that kind of playful jungle, let's go have fun in the jungle kind of theme song. Yeah.
I love the Calypso music as well that you mentioned. There's two versions of it, I believe, on the soundtrack. I thought it was such a unique idea to go with that Calypso feel.
Yeah, it's a little stretch, but it just seems fun, right? That you hear the Calypso. It's just to hear an established melody that you've memorized, to hear it done in a different arrangement. It's just fun, and nothing says party like Calypso. That just says, buy another Coke and stay another hour. And that is our job. These people spend hours and hours walking and standing in the sun and standing in queues, and we need to bring them a nice environment. We need to entertain them, with little surprises. Each island has 15 what we call discovery gags. Another executive I worked for called them surprise and delight moments. And I like discovery gag. It makes it sound like a little more mature. But anyway, each of them has 15 to 20 discovery gags. I've done a scavenger hunt for a group of high schoolers where they had to go find them all over Islands of Adventure and in each land. And that kept people busy, running around looking for them. So they're all over the place. A telephone in Superhero Island that you pick up and it says something, or you go over to the armored car and you can hear someone in the armored car trying to steal it. And just all of it, a lot more than that in Port of Entry. As you're going down the thing, there's a gambling hall going, there's a dance lesson going, there's a cat meowing over here. There's monks who chant universal Islands of Adventure as if it were Gregorian chant, the ancient kind of chanting, and that's me. And that's another thing is there's some hidden gems in there that I don't know. I just got the most talented guy around, and it was me, So I just did them myself, And you can't beat the price, I did it for free because I'd done a lot of voiceover and stuff prior to that, and some cartoon voices and stuff. So yeah, we also got the cast of Mad TV at the time and had brought them all in a studio and had kind of an idea like, this is a laundry and you're an angry laundry owner, and they would just perform these ad-lib skits, and we cut those into a lot of the little background sounds that you hear in Port of Entry. There's some gambling going on behind a fence, and they're playing Lambones, which is an ancient game of gambling, stuff like that. So there's some pretty famous people in there in some of those tracks. I'm ready to tell you the most famous, though. This is kind of exciting. So we're in Lost Continent. So Poseidon's Fury was done for opening day, and a lot of executives didn't like it, and so it was redone to pace it up. The first time it was done, Jeremy Irons played Poseidon. We flew to London and sat with Jeremy Irons while he recorded the tracks of Poseidon, a lot like Scar, in Lion King. But his voice was just so booming and so exciting. But then they redid it after a year, and he is not the voice of Poseidon in there anymore. The new director's friend is the voice of Poseidon. And so I'll just leave that right there and walk away. Jeremy Irons or somebody's friend. Okay. And so a lot of that occurs in theme park work where the audience numbers and reaction aren't good enough, and they panic and they try and improve it and then do another version of it.
On the topic of Side Fury and everything, I love Lost Continent. Just all the music in there. I wish the Merlinwood theme still played somewhere. It's great, one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah.
But I also really like the Lost City as well.
It just sounds it kind of pulls you in, it kind of sweeps you in, you know. It just pulls you right in with it's got a tempo that invites you to join the party. You know, the hand of Poseidon that's in front of Poseidon's Fury with the trident. Well, when that arrived on a truck, we buried it in the mud and called the local newspaper and said, while we were digging the attraction, we have found an artifact in the mud. And they all came running over and they're all like looking in the mud. And then we craned out that prop out of the mud, and I just thought that was the best publicity stunt in the whole world, right?
That is how you market.
I mean, they figured out, oh, I get it. Orlando Sentinel kind of played along and went, okay, yeah. So you found this, and that's fun. Yeah, congratulations.
That is incredible. That's how everything should be marketed, I think. It's gotta
be
like
right.
Yeah, you're digging up the Lost City. Look, you found it.
Yeah, like
right
they found it.
Yeah, lost and found. Those two go together, right? Yeah. So let's see, what other secrets of Lost Continent? We keep going back to Lost Continent. We've gone to Jurassic Park and then we turned around and came back because it was so much fun.
It's so good.
It is good.
Yeah. The Flying Unicorn was a kiddie coaster put in there to bump stuff up after the first year, and later that's become a Potter coaster in its place. Yeah, that's where that lived. But like, what's the theme song to a Flying Unicorn? No such thing. So we, again, even after the park was open, came up with new stuff and wrote the cues for the Flying Unicorn. Mythos restaurant was supposed to be the people will come just to eat dinner there. You know, we'll give them special parking in the back and they'll come in. It'll be the best fine dining in this part of Orlando. And so, well, it didn't turn into that, but what it turned into is a great, very air-conditioned place to sit. And it's very unusual.
If I remember correctly, the guy who designs Cheesecake Factories was the guy who designs that restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if I remember correctly,
that is what I have also heard. But maybe,
yeah,
maybe you can break that myth. I don't know.
I was not. We'd have to ask Amelia Gordon, who is the producer of Lost Continent. Yeah, she actually is the second producer. She comes in a little bit late. The first producer left, and she comes in, and she was a friend of mine that I'd worked with at the Power Plant in Baltimore, which was a Six Flags indoor park that was about as fun as nothing. But I mean, it closed rather quickly. I suggested she come in and join the party and produce that. So Lost Continent was the last land developed, the only land to change producers, and was the first one to open in previews. So that kind of says something about Amelia, who's been a Universal staple ever since. She did all the Potter in Japan and all that stuff. She's a lovely friend, and I like her a lot. So anyway, we're walking around. Okay, so now we leave Jurassic Park and we're headed to Toon Lagoon. So here's what happens. I had ridden It's a Small World and was always annoyed that you could hear two different tracks at the same time. You go in the next chamber and the kind of the one behind you is going. So as technology got better and we could synchronize multiple players, that's what I wanted to do in Toon Lagoon. And so Comic Strip Lane is a whole bunch of tracks all playing in dead sync at the same time. Betty Boop is singing I Want to Be Loved by You in dead sync with every other track that's going up and down the street, with the Vikings that are singing up on the top, with the dogs that are barking in the fountain, with Blondie and Dagwood singing their song down there, with the trumpet, Beetle Bailey's trumpets playing out of tune. He's playing a counter melody to this vamp that plays as you walk down the street. So that was really one of the joys, to prove that we could do that. And I'll tell you, that's another thing about family, is the hardware producer, his name was Bill Battelle. That's still his name, probably. And Bill lives and works in Orlando. Bill was a partner in creating this stuff. Sometimes we, the creatives, we call on the technical and we say, we want the room to spin and puke and turn all colors. And they go, you can't do that. I would go to Bill and say, I want to do this. And he would say, I want to do that too. And together, he designed the hardware that could do the tricks that we wanted to do. And that was a partnership. Again, happens very rarely where a group of people, creatives, get together and all kind of support each other and work with the technical and work with all of that. And I'll tell you, the key person in this story is Mark Woodbury, who's now a very important person now at Universal. At the time, he was the creative director of the park. And we would go to him when budgets were cut and we were fighting against the machine. Oh my gosh, the project manager cares about two things: money and schedule. That's all he cares about. Could give I almost said it. He could not give it all. He doesn't care at all about anything else. So fighting for the creative, all he could see was, and he said it to us a couple of times, you guys just want to spend money. That's all you want to do. Well, Mark Woodbury ran interface in there and said, no, I'm going to help us. And Mark was my personal boss and a very good friend, and made sure that we creatively got what we were fighting for. Now, it might have meant cutting an attraction. We all cut an attraction. Everybody cut one. From the original design. Instead of giving everybody in the class a haircut, we just kicked one kid out. You know what I mean? And said, so instead of trimming everything, Seuss Landing had an attraction called the Sensorium. As soon as you walk in Seuss Landing, see that space on the right? That's an attraction where you throw fish and you throw money into fish's mouths for charity. That was an attraction right there. And we don't miss it. What we gain from that is all the other attractions got to keep their budgets. You see, by eliminating that one. And that's no secret that the Noisarium was once there and isn't there now. And it's fine. It's just fine. Horton has a fiber optic in his hand on the top of the carousel. And in Morse code, he is naming all the people that worked on it. The blinking on the end of his fiber optic is us in Morse code. So the two Zacks that meet in the middle of Seuss Landing. One's going north, one's going south, and they're so stubborn. They just fight it. Okay. So we thought it'd be fun to do a stop action movie of that. So when we started the park, it was all mud and water and horrible, rain. And we put one Zack on one end and one on the other and had a camera on the roof taking a photograph every day. So the two Zacks would come together and not budge, right? And we had them go skiddy-wampus, all turn curves and come around and kind of ran and made it so that just at the very end, and we were going to cement them, they meet each other right there. Well, somebody parked a truck in front of, so the movie is like 90% there. Oh, they're gonna, oh, there's a truck. And so the whole rest of the movie was this truck that had to be part of something. And we were, because there's no video at the time, we couldn't like check to see if because it was way up on top of a building, pointing down. So anyway, the kid's telling the story at the Zacks. Geisel was born in Springfield, Missouri, his birthplace. So we go to Audrey Geisel and say, on his birthday, I want to go to Springfield and have a contest of what kid in third grade reads the most books, and whatever kid reads the most books gets to tell the Zack story and it's their voice. And we'll go up there and record them, and we'll do a publicity stunt about the thing. Okay, 15 kids read all the same number of books, and we audition all 15. And I am such a softie that we cast all 15, and all 15 read it. And so it's a bunch of kids all cut in. One says one sentence, and the next one says another sentence. And it's in a loop that is, they all say it in a different order. So it's those kids who won the contest that read the story of the Zacks right there. And when you hear kids reading it, it's kind of cute. So it was Christmas time when we recorded it. And so they had a parade, and they said they were looking for a grand marshal. And so I called them and said, these 15 kids are your grand marshal. And they were the grand marshal of the Christmas parade. These kids thought they had died and gone to heaven. They're on a float. They are waving. They are winners. They're going to be heard at Universal. And, the executives go, is this really worth the trip? I go, you just sold 15 more tickets. You kidding? Those parents are going to, and drag 50 people with them, And my kid's reading the story of the Zacks down there, So we did these kinds of things. I thought were just a lot of fun. And, so we could have some kids, have some kids read the book instead of some adults.
That's who it was for,
Exactly. Even though we did audition Mark Hamill here in town just to read the book. And I think it was to meet Mark Hamill.
Look, And I will take any excuse to meet him. That is awesome.
Exactly, right. So, but his voice wasn't right. Wink.
You didn't find any place for him?
Well, wait, there's celebrities coming. Okay, so we're in Toon Lagoon and Dudley Do Right. So we get the official voices to play all the parts in Dudley Do Right, right? And June Foray, who is Rocky and is Nell and is all the voices of the Jay Ward character. She's Smurfette. She is like one of the most famous voiceover people, and she does the last performance of her life and does Nell for us one last time. So that is her voice in there, and it's kind of a tribute to June, who created the role and then performs it one last time in there. The other people, all the other characters who actually perform the originals, they're dead, and so we have the official sound-alike person, and that is Corey Burton. And this is an important name because Corey Burton, you hear Corey Burton when you listen to a Disney movie. You hear Corey Burton. He has, and I challenge you to look him up. He has got a resume of thousands of voices that this man does, but he is the official Dudley. So he plays that part in there. Anyway, so there's a prop room as you go through the queue. And on the wall is a bear and a beaver, right? So I just like, what other excuse? So Dom DeLuise was a friend of mine, and I asked Dom, would you and Charles Nelson Riley, who are just, those are names from the 60s of comedians. Dom is in all those Smoking the Bandit movies. He's in, and Charles is just it's everything. You turn on any variety show and so we get Charles and Dom in the studio and say, you're going to be the bear and the beaver. And we had a big drawing of the bear and the beaver in the back, and they look at it, and it's like old vaudevillians that have just died and been forgotten in this prop room. And we did 8 hours with these guys, and I had a headache by the end. It was just, we had laughed from morning to lunch break and from lunch break to the end of the day. Just the funniest, maybe 30% we couldn't use as a little adult humor in there, and we had to kind of cut that out. But the bear and the beaver are Dom DeLuise and Charles Nelson Riley in there, which just gives me so much joy to think they're performing there more times than in their entire career. I mean, more people per hour hear them do a show than any actor. I mean, any actor should give their left leg to do with these, because if you want to be an actor and want to have people hear your performance, it goes down all day long, 7 days a week, 10-hour days. So they're over there.
Wow, that's mind-blowing that it's 8 hours. Just like recorded and just let them go. That's great.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. It was old vaudeville. You say one line, I say a line in response, you say the punchline, and they would just ask each other kind of vaudeville jokes. And we had a couple like written down, but they were tried and true performers for years and years and years, and just made up their own. So then on to Superhero Island. What are the secrets of that? We had to have the Spider-Man theme song in Spider-Man, and that took some doing because, compositions, you need to go to the composer, and finding the composer or the rights holder to the Spider-Man song was just, and we had to have it. You have to. Yeah. It is the most famous song associated with Spider-Man, for most people. So it took lawyers and phone calls and letters and favors and all this stuff. And we had a very sharp attorney that worked on the project. Claire Margaret Grover was her name, and she just crackerjack attorney, and she got us the rights to that. And it was just so exciting. It's like we had a baby or something. We're all running around screaming, we got the rights. Unfortunately, I was in a Wendy's at the time, and instead of needed some psychiatric help. But it's just good fun. Just good fun to have those milestones, and then be able to get them. Made for a lot of fun. So now there's a different Hulk coaster than the one we built. Our Bruce Banner was Chris Parnell, which is an actor on Saturday Night Live, and he's on 30 Rock and all this stuff. And he was actually with us recording when he got the call that he was going to be on Saturday Night Live. It actually, yeah. So we got to see Chris go from Obscura to Star, and his Bruce Banner was hilarious. I mean, it was so good. And because as you went up the ascent in the original version, Bruce Banner is talking and talking, what's going on here? What's going on? I can't believe it. And he transforms into the Hulk, and gets the Hulk voice just as you shoot out the very end. I don't know what they're doing now since they remodeled it, but that was the original concept. And so Scott Trowbridge's baby is all of Superhero Island. That becomes his baby. And then Spider-Man, which at the time was the most sophisticated ride that anyone had ever seen. Disney was invited to see it, and they looked at us and said, well, okay, now the bar has been raised. Gauntlet thrown. We're going to try and outdo it. But that is amazing. And the obstacle to overcome wasn't the story. Of course, the story is Spider-Man. He's going to meet all of his villains. That's the easy part. The hard part was, can you do 3D and be moving? And that had to be proved to executives in a $1 million mock-up here in Burbank, California, where we had to have a 3D projection, and we had to take executives on a wagon and pull them across and show, look, you can move with this animation. You don't have to sit and look at each theater and sit and look at each theater, especially the dome ending, where you're falling at the very, you really do that sweep across. Of course, the other ones are called doghouses. You ride into the doghouse, you look at a scene, you back up, you ride into the next doghouse. Those were easy. But at those big dome, that falling sequence, can the sweet spot of 3D move with you? It had never been done before. And Scott Trowbridge is the genius behind that. A lot of people take credit for it, and that's not true, but it's true. It really is Scott. Lots of opening day shows in all the islands. Some of the shows remain, some don't remain. So we had to do all the soundtracks for those too. And then outside of Toon Lagoon is the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater, or whatever it's called this hour. And we opened with a show that was written by a composer named Andrew Lippa, who at the time was not successful, but is now a Broadway composer. He wrote The Big Fish, Addams Family, The Wild Party. I mean, he is a very successful Broadway composer, but he wasn't back then. And that was a really great show, but really long, and a lot of rubberhead characters, not moving their lips to a soundtrack, just kind of, nodding and stuff like that. But it was a very ambitious show and had a great kind of Broadway soundtrack. It was 22 minutes long, not air conditioned there. The guests got very restless and kind of like, ooh, what are we doing here? And it closed after a short time and became a skateboard extravaganza, or here, look, I can flip a bike on a ramp, and I can
right
do
now I think it's for the cheerleaders when they come down and all that.
Right. Okay. Well, that would be a good use for it. Yeah, they would never. Budget cuts made it so that was not an air conditioned space. So had that been an air conditioned space, maybe you could keep people there. I'll sit in any air conditioning in Orlando and do any. If this room's air conditioned and they show me, the story of Feet, I'd sit there and watch it just to be out of the heat. Right. The other thing is on opening week, we had a fireworks show. We had to, because all the parks have one. And William Kidd wrote this amazing score, and it didn't have a plot. It was just fireworks and water synchronized to music. But in that score, we wrote the love theme to Islands of Adventure, which is two Broadway singers singing this kind of hokey. Well, it's very Disney. It's like and it was called "I Found My Adventure with You," and it's like a love duet back and forth about how they both found adventure with each other and they still love each other and stuff like that. And it's in the vein of "I Can Show You the World." It's kind of like that, And we used it there, and I don't think it was ever used again. I've never heard it. I have it, and I now and then just play it and go, oh, that's really funny and hokey. But it's like a good love song. It's as good as, "I Can Show You the World." It's that good, and full orchestra behind it, and Broadway singers singing the two parts. And and that's kind of fun. We also made marching band scores to the Islands of Adventure theme, which I've never heard a high school band come and visit. And
look, my band director did not give us those. I would kill to play those.
Exactly. Somewhere in Universal's a drawer, there is a complete marching band score
I'm
to
gonna go look
the
for that.
theme
I'm gonna
song.
go run around backstage. I'm gonna find that.
Yeah, you better talk to somebody at Universal Creative because somebody would know that. They're all kind of busy right now in this other park, so they probably
But
would.
I don't care. I need to find them.
Yeah, yeah. We did a whole bunch of those kinds of things, like the hotels. Portofino was part of the opening day hotel and needed wake up calls. So I got this telephone call of like, can you have the characters wake us up? You push 1 to talk to Cat in the Hat, or have Cat in the Hat wake you up. You push 2 to have Spider-Man wake you up. So we run back in the studio and we do all of that too. At the time, Steve Harvey had a sitcom that was on television, and they went and they had done some partnership deal where Steve Harvey's family goes to Islands of Adventure. Well, when you film in a theme park, you have to shut all the soundtracks off because of cutting. You know, the master won't match the close-up that's done 10 minutes later. And there's no matching that can do. So it's always done in silence with a little park ambience in the back. So they hand me an episode of the Steve Harvey Show and say everywhere they walk, put that music in from where their geography is in the park. So in post, we put in all the sound effects and all the themes. And so this one episode of the Steve Harvey Show has a little walk through Islands of Adventure. And it's kind of fun.
It's incredible.
These stories can't stay alive after I die. See, I have to rely on you folks to keep these alive and pass them on. You know, we had a preview center a couple of years before Islands opened, and it was over at the main park because Islands didn't exist. And the preview center, we were giving sneak previews of what this was. So we sneak previewed music. And wrote all that music too. Didn't end up using much of it because it was kind of simple for that small little preview center. But yeah, we hinted towards a couple of things that were coming. You know, we played the Seuss Landing theme in a simple kind of synth way. And that was another task that we got to do. And then they were tapping our talents to do stuff at Universal in the main park. And then right after Islands, I moved to Japan and did Universal Studios Japan and did all those attractions, and took a lot of things from like take the new Jurassic Park stuff and do that. 3 years ago, I just did Jurassic World here in Hollywood. And I had worked on the original Jurassic Park in Hollywood when I was with Landmark Entertainment. And then here I was, the creative director at the remodeling and Make It Jurassic World. It just seemed like, okay, this is a perfect bookend to my career. I'm gonna stop.
It turned out great. I love it. I just wrote it like 2 months ago.
It's got an impressive finale. That's an impressive creature at the end. Yeah,
That's true. Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. You know, got to work with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, and and get them in there because that had to be right. They have to be a part of it, and it was fun. Yeah,
yeah.
All these have their fun side to them. You know, they have their hard work. They have problems, but they have the fun side. You know, and it's like hearing what you just said. Hey, I wrote it and it was a lot of fun. I was like, yeah, okay, that was worth it. You know, because that's why we build them.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And all the bad stories go away. All the good stories stay. You know, some of the bad ones stay, but you know, we still we build them to entertain people. It's entertainment, and if you're entertained, then I guess we did our job right.
I
Fair.
can definitely say we are entertained.
There you go.
Definitely. One thing that maybe wasn't fully touched on, but you hinted towards, was Grinchmas, because there was a whole like Grinchmas like soundtrack and CD that you said that you worked on.
Right. So I talked to Audrey Geisel and said, "What about a Grinch Christmas album?" And she was interested, and because she said, "Well, the Grinch Christmas album is this Grinch That Stole Christmas. That's as much as Theodore touched Christmas and wanted to, you know, that's it." So I said to her, "What about a karaoke album where we have a kids choir sing standard Christmas songs, and then a second track where there are no vocals, and then you perform it, so it becomes like a karaoke track." And karaoke tracks were around, but not everywhere and not easily accessible. So 8 tracks with vocals, 8 tracks without vocals, and we got all public domain songs, all the, you know, Jingle Bells and all the Christmas songs that have fallen in the public domain. So we didn't have to chase down rights and do all that stuff. So we get a third grade class here in Los Angeles and bring them into the studio. And they'd been working for 4 months to learn these songs, right? And they can't hold the earphones on their heads. Their heads are little. We didn't think that kids need their own earphones. And this earphones are sliding off the kids' heads. And they're just so nervous. And they're standing here in the dark and great big microphones are in their face. And it was one of the funniest afternoons of my career of these little kids just pouring their heart out into this track, just singing like little who's at the end of the animated one. And it was very, very fun. So we made that CD. Marketing had talked to us and said, we can sell this thing. You give us, 10,000 of them. Did it, had a reorder, and then they never asked for reorder again. So it went away, fell into obscura. Now that one, all the rights are clear. So it could go on, on any streaming music platform if Universal wanted to. But again, I don't own it. Universal owns it, and they should do that because I think it's a lot of fun just hearing kids sing off key. They're good, but there's a couple little stragglers in there that remind you that it's kids, and I think that's really fun. And kids should sing that, in Seuss Landing. So yeah. And then we opened with a Christmas show there. It was a little trailer that opened up and the Grinch came out and there was a little Christmas show. And we'd done that with a company called Sound Deluxe, which was right across the street at the time. And they produced that and it turned out really fun. It was really fun. There was a lot on opening day. When you think of other theme parks and their opening day, they don't have as much working as we had, and I have all these photographs. Steven Spielberg came, and celebrities came, and it was just very, very exciting that it was. The opening day of Disneyland, people's high heels were sinking in the tar as they were walking because the tar hadn't set yet in the streets and stuff like that. We didn't have any of those problems. We did have, though, the mysterious Seuss trolley did not open on opening day, in Seuss Landing. And that's an entire story for another time. Because on opening day, there was an entire soundtrack in there. It was programmed. Every scene had music, dialogue, and effects. But for safety reasons, some OSHA came in and said you couldn't operate the ride. And so it didn't. And then we put some characters in it and just let it be scenery, for a while. But no guest ever rode the ride. There was so much, this
is a big project.
It was very ambitious. Yeah. We worked on it for 5 years. 300 of us relocated from Los Angeles to Orlando, and it was principally a Los Angeles group that moved there. And where the hotels are across the street, there were no hotels there then. That was our staging area. That's where all the shipment of stuff came, and those were our offices. So we'd put on a hard hat and walk into the queue of Spider-Man. That was the direct shot from crossing the street and going in to go to work every day. On opening day, we had a boat ride from the end of the lagoon over to the Discovery Center that crisscrossed back and forth. And it was called Island Skipper Tours. And it had a soundtrack. And it had dialogue, and it was a funny banter that the captain would do about taking you from one island to the other, and it actually was straight across to, which was good if you wanted to just go straight to the other side. Yeah.
So there's also like exit music too, because you talk a little bit about the fireworks show and everything, but we have the Call to Adventure, which is kind of like more the nowadays at least it's like the morning soundtrack, and then we also have the Adventure Lives On that plays like in the evening.
Right. So we did a goodbye version that clicks on in the afternoon, and it's the same melody. It's a melodic kind of, it's the last little hug before you leave, and because you're beat by then and you don't want to get pounded with that welcome song. You want to just stroll out and take your time. That's the retail motto, is take your time leaving. A lot of retail temptations at the end. And that's a huge revenue stream, of course. How can we draw you into those? By the way, we did all the music for all the interiors of all the shops too, to make sure that you were bathed in, immersive. There it is again. Immersive experience, so all the shops had original scores. too. That's how you get up to that 9-hour mark. Is it all the attractions, all the background music, and all the interiors of everything? Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting that the exit music is such loud and powerful horns sounds because I feel like it doesn't like fit the same idea of like, oh, you're leaving the park. Does that make sense? Like it's such difference.
Yeah, yeah. We have to be careful that it's not too melancholy,
Right.
of like, oh, we'll never see you again, Oh, that was, there's still some energy about, and we have multiple day visitors, so there's that. So you don't want it to be like the finale and there's no more.
Right.
Yeah. It says on the top, the adventure lives on, and we try and keep that going with, yeah, the adventure lives on. You take home these and come back. I can see the man playing Merlin. I can't think of his name. We had just so many crazy characters. We go to the rights holder to Spider-Man and say, so who's the official voice? And they're, no, no, and they just started to do the features and things. It's like, you mean the cartoon guy? And it's like, well, yeah, don't you have it? Everybody else has, Jay Ward had the official voices and had all those things. So the story that the whole thing was going to be cartoon world. That was the original design of Islands. And so thank God that it didn't do that, because that would have been a relentless journey, wouldn't it? And then you can't add to it. You can't add a King Kong and a Harry Potter and all that stuff. So it was genius to come up with, and it was Phil Hedema to come up with islands where you get to go to different islands, and there's this actual separation of each one. And so it just that's got adventure written all over it. Of course, Disneyland had, zones and stuff, but not like islands where you get to go and travel to each different one. That raises the entertainment bar. The truth is that the customers wanted a thrill park. That's really what this all comes from. And as you can see, everybody responded to that. Disney has thrill parks. Everybody has a thrill park. You have to put in some to bring in the tweens and interest them. And at the time, Universal Studios didn't really have anything exciting like for the tweens. And then Islands did. And, Hulk was a world-class coaster, and Dueling Dragons was a world-class coaster. We also hosted the Coaster Club. That there's an international coaster club, and we had a preview where we bust them in and asked them not to touch anything and let them ride Hulk when it was before it opened, so that they'd get the buzz going. Those little publicity things that we did. I mean, there was a partnership with Kodak at the time, and that's why there's a little mini CD on there as a photograph, and it was a partnership with Kodak. If you bought so much Kodak film, you would get this preview CD, and on that preview CD are 4 songs probably from the park, and that created a lot of buzz too. People really wanted this and started collecting them. And if you look on eBay now, you can find that CD for a lot of money, where because people want that kind of collector, one of a kind thing, and even though you have to explain to some people now what a CD is, but I think this group probably understands what a CD is. It's the last thing we had before streaming.
Yeah.
So that's the story of the soundtracks of Islands of Adventure.
That is a grand story, truly.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Do you have any advice for those wanting to get into the theme park industry?
Advice for the theme park industry? Well, let's see. I think you'd want to know what division you'd want to get into. If you want to be a creative director, that line forms here and goes around the earth twice, and there's a pyramid, and there's a very few opportunities at the top of the pyramid, and it gets wider and wider and wider and goes down. I would say start with a smaller design company and learn the craft there. See what you're good at. Be a coordinator, be an assistant, and really go up the ranks, because you can go up the ranks at those smaller places. I know that's where I cut my baby teeth. It was on Landmark Entertainment, where I got opportunities to be a show director on 8 different shows during my time there, and said, hey, I do post-production. I'm going to do my own soundtrack to my own show. And they were like, Yar? Okay. And so I got to do that because I have those skills. I'll tell you, even the big guy like Universal Creative has opportunities. it has openings, and get your foot in the door and start making connections. I wouldn't have gone down there had my friend not known Gary Goddard. That's kind of how I got down to Landmark Entertainment. I wouldn't have been hired at Universal had I not known Scott Trowbridge, Phil Hedema, and Robin Reardon. Robin Reardon was one of the original creative team, and she left when I came. I don't take that personal. No, she wasn't with them any longer. And so, it's a small group of people that know each other. And I guess that's true a lot of in entertainment. Yeah, celebrities sometimes have Mel Brooks hired a man to do his music in his very first movie, and it's the same man that does every movie because he trusts him. They have a relationship. He delivered, and why go find another one? So yeah, that trust. Yeah, you can't buy that. Work hard, make connections, and plan on not having a life.
And now you get to live a life and have all these stories to tell.
That's true. That is true. I did projects in Japan and Korea and Singapore and China and Macau. And it was you can see the world. You could see the world back then. Maybe you still can. There's still projects all over the world, and all those countries want American talent because they recognize that we are innovators and thinkers, and we approach creativity much differently and much freer, wilder, and come up with more off the wall ideas. If you think inside the box, you don't get the wild ideas. You think outside the box, here come the wild ideas. And there are a lot of really talented people in our industry that have made a lot of great attractions around the world, that I think we can all be very proud of.
Absolutely. And if you could say something to theme park fans and enthusiasts about your time working on this stuff, what would it be?
First of all, it's thank you. I mean, if we didn't have theme park fans, we'd be out of work. We have to have people like our stuff. And we appreciate those roller coaster aficionados and all those people that are diehard park fans. They keep the buzz going. They blog. They keep it alive. And that talk, the rumor that Splash Mountain was going to close here in Anaheim brought thousands of people to the park. And then when they did say they were going to close it, it brought thousands more, and a lot of that is the blog world and social media just saying, you got to go do this. You got to go see this. I know the Star Wars stuff at Disneyland social media really boosted that. And those are fans. Those are people that appreciate it and know good stuff. The flip side of that is it's hard to fool the fans. You got to do it right. I think that's what Islands of Adventure did. They really said, let's do it right this time. Disney had a reputation of spending a lot of money on things that Universal prior didn't. And they said, we're going to make it, we're going to do it right, and we're going to create another world. And it's going to pay off. And I think Islands did.
And I'd say so. It set a new standard for what theme parks have become.
And it definitely did for Universal, because from that, now they grew and they're growing and growing, made a water park, now doing Epic, and all that is because of revenue that they have gotten from doing it right. It's exciting. The Universal Studios was the big experiment in Orlando. Disney, all these thousands of people, or millions, are coming every single year. Can we tap into that river? Can we put our arm and just scoop some of that water out? And they built a park and got attendance. It's like, hey, wait a minute. We can cash in on some of these tourists that come to Orlando and give them another, more than just Disney, more than just to do. So the experiment of Universal's first park worked. It really worked. It didn't hurt Disney, didn't hurt anybody, but they went, wait a minute, we this could be something. I have all these articles from opening day of Islands of Adventure where they say things like, Disney, look out, you're going to get dented in your attendance. We're going to steal some of your attendance. And it's all fair. It's just business. If I have a better movie than you come to my movie. If I got a better play than that one, you come to my play. So, and like you said, we win as guests because the bar just keeps going higher and higher and higher. You know, Spider-Man begat something else.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. It was an incredible experience to talk to you.
Well, I had a good time.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. For our next adventure, we'll be joined by Adrian Gorton. See you there.